This is a WKYT podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of, what is this, the 19th, 20th episode?
We're
Something
moving
like that.
along.
Time flies when you're having fun.
I'm shocked we've made it this far. And I'm also shocked by our next guest. Like
Conversations with Victor and Andrea.
How we landed Steve
We
Hartman.
didn't land him. You landed him. This is a clap for Andrea because this was all you. You made this happen.
Well, as we've said, you do most of the work for our
That's true. I guess it
podcast.
was good that you finally pulled your weight and then some.
And I can't even take all the credit. I found out that Bill was going to interview Steve Hartman while he was here. He was giving a speech in Georgetown College for their scholarship series, and Bill got him for Newsmakers. And I was so jealous because I'm telling you, Steve Hartman is one of my heroes, and you're going to be able to tell.
We'll get into that, yeah.
Oh, I was so intimidated, but I grew up, my grandparents, we lived together. After my dad died, we all lived in one house, and they watched a lot of CBS Sunday Morning.
Yeah.
So that's always been one of my favorite shows, even when I was young. And his were always my favorite segments of like my favorite shows. So I look up to him a lot. And so Shelby, my EP, just was like, you should try to get Steve Hartman. It's like the thought never crossed my mind. And so many times I think in life, we just don't even think to ask. We just assume the answer is no.
You miss the shots you don't take.
Exactly. So I think that taught me a good lesson that sometimes you just got to ask.
We went for it and we got him. And yeah, it was, as you'll hear near the end of the interview, we may have went a little longer than we were anticipating. Because I think
we
people
got
were
in
outside
trouble.
like, oh, we got to go. We didn't actually get in trouble. Apparently, everyone was outside, but they were afraid to come in. That's what Jeff told me. I don't know if we intimidate people or if they were just, but
I don't think we have that power.
I don't either. But finally, Jeff came in and just gave me a nod. I was like, all right, man, we got it.
I could have talked to him all day. I mean, after, like, as soon as we were done, I was like, oh, I should have asked him this.
Well, so I felt bad that we took him so long because I didn't know how long we had. And so then I was like, yeah,
know.
we do need to get on the road, but on the road.
But
anyway.
That was an accident, but I love it. That's his segment, by the way, in case you don't know. But Steve Hartman is easily one of the most talented storytellers.
Yeah, and even though up until now we focused on people who work in this building, he is someone you watch on WKYT all the time, so it felt pretty appropriate.
Part of the CBS family.
Yeah, that's right. And so we were very excited to talk to him, and Andrea was more than a little nervous.
Yes.
But I think she calmed down some by the end.
I hope so.
I also really enjoyed that you put on, I don't know if you put it on Twitter, but you definitely put it on Instagram maybe, all the faces you made while we were taking pictures.
Oh, I was a total
pictures.
mess.
One of them turned out really good, and then there were a few where there was some stuff going on.
I mean, you can see that I was a hot mess, which I typically am. I mean, from the NCAA podcast, you kind of know how I am in real life. So it took me a minute to get it together, but I typically do. So typically.
All right. Well, everyone, here is our conversation with Steve Hartman.
All right. So first things first, I've done a little research so that we don't waste a moment of this podcast with you, because this is your first podcast, so
it's my first
which
podcast.
we just discovered, which is a big deal.
A little intimidating for us because
I'm a little reclusive when I'm not on TV, and I don't do a lot of public speaking.
Right.
I don't do a lot of talking. I just live on a farm with my family. So, yes, you should be flattered.
I don't know how we did this, Victor. We got really lucky.
I had it in my mind, Lexington. That's where I'm going to do my first one.
There you go. We feel very honored and special because of that. So I think something when I was
really are
researching
nervous,
this,
aren't you? Look at you. Andrea
I'm
told me, she's
fine.
like, I'm so nervous. And now
I
her
am.
hand is shaking. She's holding her notes.
I'm a huge fan.
Here you go. Let's just set that over there.
I'm
We'll
a
just
huge
talk.
fan.
It's okay.
Okay, I'll just talk. That's probably
There you go.
better. So I read somewhere that basically most people in this industry want that first breaking story. They want the top of the show. But you have started owning the last story. So kind of explain your mindset on that.
Well, you're right that most reporters, they're always competing for the first story, and I was never like that. I think partly because if you cover the lead story, well, a couple reasons. One is there's other reporters there. If you don't get that soundbite or get that angle, the boss is watching the other shows and he's going to know you messed up. If you're covering the doll birthday party, NBC and ABC are not there.
Right.
So your version is the oldie record there is. But I also like the chance to be able to be creative and to make people feel something.
Right.
Especially now, that's what I care about most, because news does a really good job of making people fearful and angry, but we don't do a very good job with joy. And I think at that last spot in the newscast, you can bring people some joy.
Well, I think a lot of people's goal, or at least producers, directors, they're like, just keep them till the end. You do that for the evening news. I mean, you've done that for a long time with On the Road.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I know I always waited till the end to watch. So you also did this thing called Everybody Has a Story, which was an interesting concept. You literally threw a dart at a map.
Yeah, that started as a joke. There was a guy in Lewiston, Idaho, who'd been doing that. He'd been flipping through the Lewiston, Idaho phone book, pointing to a name and putting their story on the front page. He'd find out something about them. And I went and interviewed him, and then as a joke, I said, well, you can't really do that. What if I threw a dart what if I threw a dart at a map of America, picked somebody out of the phone book, I'd get some mind-numbing nobody, and it would be kind of funny. It'd be funny for me to try to get a story out of them. We did that, and we got an amazing story.
It worked.
Yeah. So CBS said, try it again, and I tried so much to talk him out of it. I said, we got lucky. This is not going to happen.
I wasn't being serious.
Yeah, right. We ended up doing 123 of those stories.
Wow.
I was on David Letterman and Oprah, and it was quite a thing for a while. And we really kind of did prove the adage that everybody has a story, and there was a list of great, compelling stories dangling from every payphone in America, which was kind of a surprise to me.
And you made it hard on yourself, because the first person that said yes, you did it.
That's right. That was the whole point of it. If you're going to start screening people, that's what we do in news. We find people that we think are good characters. You guys, you do it all the time. I do it all the time now. And I just was kind of curious after a while, what if you removed all those filters and just took the very first person? Who would you get? What kind of sampling of what is our country really all about? Who are we? And so, yeah, if it was whoever it was, we never said no, never.
So let's go back to the beginning. How did you get started in the news business? That's one thing we always kind of hit on, how everybody formed.
Well, in high school, even before high school, people start asking you, what do you want to do? And you only know about 3 jobs: police officer, fireman, doctor. Okay, I don't want to be any of those.
Maybe someday I'll be president.
Yeah, right. Maybe president. Yeah. And if you don't want to be any of those, you just say, I don't know. And through grade school, I don't know. Through high school, a lot of high school, I don't know. And then I got to my high school journalism class, and the teacher was a really good teacher. It was a fun class to be in. I enjoyed it. I excelled at it. I was kind of a little bit of a loser in high school, for lack of a better word.
Us too.
Yeah, I have a theory that's why we go into TV news. Yeah, we'll show you where somebody. You'll watch us someday.
Look at me.
Yeah, look at me now. Yeah. So I just picked journalism because I like that teacher, and I never changed my mind.
They can make a huge difference.
What was your first job in the industry?
I got lucky. I got a great internship at the 60th Market. It was my between junior and senior year, and they put you on TV as an intern, summer intern. I guess they were looking for cheap labor.
Where was that?
That was in Toledo.
Okay.
That's how I've justified many of my jobs. I guess I came cheap. I don't know how I'm here.
Right. But a lot of internships, they don't let you be on camera.
Right.
So I got to, and then my senior year, they hired me 4 days a week. So I failed some classes my senior year because I was always up at the TV station.
Which seems all right, yeah. If you're like, well, I've already got my
right.
job,
It seemed
so.
okay.
Right.
Yeah.
You could justify it that way. So one thing I think you're really good at, because I went back and watched some of your stories as research of a kind. Of course, I immediately started crying because your stories, they do get right to the heart of a person. And so quickly. You have a little more time than the average news stories, but you're able to make me feel and fall in love with these characters so quickly. Like, what is your secret? Do you have a question, like a go-to question or a trick?
Are you going to take my job someday?
I want to. Only when you're done with it, because I don't think I could fill your shoes by any means, but...
I don't know. That's hard for me. I don't know how I do what I do, to be honest with you.
Right.
I know that I pick stories where I do like the person. And there's a formula to it. You have to get to know the person before you can care about them. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes it's good to have a laugh before you have a cry. If you ever watch old episodes of MASH, it was a very funny show, but at the end you would sometimes be in tears. And I think, we think of those as opposite emotions, but they're kind of intertwined.
Right.
I mean, you have happy tears, that's quite an oxymoron,
extremes,
it's probably the world's most wonderful oxymoron. But these are wedded together, so, and the stories build kind of like waves. I think comedy, good storytelling, there's a build and then there's a crash and then there's the lull afterwards. So there's a formula to it. I don't think about it too much if I started thinking about it. And I can't talk to people like you too much because you start to fill my head. My ego gets big. I can't fit out the door.
I don't believe that.
No, it is true. And
I don't believe that.
I start to like, okay, how do I do what I do?
Wait,
don't think. Yeah, don't make me think. Just do it.
Yeah, I understand that completely. Well, who do you look up to? Because I feel like you're kind of, not to build you up, but you're kind of the industry standard for, those feature stories. But like, what do you read? Who do you watch? Who do you enjoy?
Well, Charles Kuralt, who had my job before me, sometimes I will go back and I'll watch his stories. And you think I'm good. If you go back and watch them, I would strongly suggest the Chandler family reunion story. It's about a family, very poor family, but they raised something like 9 kids who went on to college. And it's about a 5-minute story. The visuals aren't great, but the writing is so exquisite. He goes in for about 15 seconds describing the food on the table. I would lose the audience after mashed potatoes.
Right, many of us would, yeah.
But he somehow held people's interest and did it before we had computers. We write on computers now, so you can write something, you go back. Back in the old days, in fact, when I first started, you're at a typewriter and you got a script in front of you and you kind of start writing from the beginning and you don't go back and change the top. It's too hard. You have to rewrite everything. And he would write these things in like 10 minutes. So I'm not sure who I look up to today, but I look back to the past and I can find inspiration in him.
Unfortunately, you're kind of unique in this industry at this point because, like you said, it's so skewed where we focus so much on, the crime and everything. And it's not actually a reality. There are good people out there, and how important do you think that is?
That's the problem sometimes, and I would say with local news especially, all the coverage of crime. My fear is that it presents this skewed sense of what your community's about. People fear crime much more than they should, partly because there's so much of it on TV. It's the easiest thing to cover. You just listen to the scanner and there's a fire or there's a murder, you go out and cover it. You don't have to be that creative to write the story. Because all the information's right there. And it's dramatic in a certain way. But the problem is that it doesn't represent the community. And that's the other reason I think about retiring sometimes, but I don't, because I feel like we need that balance, because the first 22 minutes of the newscast isn't necessarily who we are. We're much more like the last 3 minutes.
Right, yeah.
What's your workflow like at this point? I mean, how many days a week do you have a story aired?
Once a week. Usually we find a story somewhere and travel there and spend a day or 2 sometimes shooting it, then go back and I edit my own stories. I work from home.
Okay.
And so I look at all the tape and I start to piece it together, and then Friday it's on the evening news, 6:30 East Coast time, and it's done maybe at 5:30 East Coast time, and I send it in over the internet and then spend the rest of the weekend with my kids.
I think it also helps, I guess, just the way things have changed. So many of your stories now will show up online and then just start getting shared and shared and shared, and suddenly it's got this a lot longer lifespan than
yes,
it would have
isn't
in the
that
past.
interesting? More people sometimes see them online than we'll see them when they're broadcast. And even in schools, another reason that I keep doing this job is because the stories are now used as character education in schools, and we have a network of teachers all across the country that use these stories as a launching point to get in discussions about kindness and whatnot. And so it's kind of, there's a whole nother audience there. Preachers use them, on Sundays. So they start on the evening news or CBS Sunday Morning, but sometimes that's just the beginning.
Right.
And they're still shared. There's stories from 5 years ago that people say, "Oh, I saw your story on." I don't even remember doing it.
Right. You're like, me? Yeah. They say actors are the same way. People say a certain line and they're like, I don't.
Right. Oh, really?
I got nothing on that. Yeah. So I read there was something you did called the Stevening News.
Oh my gosh.
Honey, I went back.
This is why I never wanted to do a podcast.
Dredging up all these.
I found it.
So here's the thing.
It sounded
she has
like
a habit of pulling up embarrassing stuff. So
it sounded like an interesting title at the time.
I love
Evening
it.
News, Evening News.
My name is Steve. It fits.
I used to do a lot of sort of goofy, features like you see in local news sometimes. I've obviously gotten away from that, but that was the segment that I did when I was a local news reporter in Los Angeles. Before that, and they always come with clever names for these things. I did Life Around Here in in New York City, which is probably the most boring name, and then Heart of the Cities in Minneapolis.
Oh, I like it.
So,
I like it.
So Stephen News maybe was an improvement upon those two. But On the Road, I'm sticking with On the Road. When they started calling my segment On the Road with Charles Carlton, that 50-year history,
Right.
That was like the most one of the more emotional moments of my career. It's
can
like,
imagine.
really, you want to call my segment On the Road?
Those talk about, filling some big shoes.
Yeah.
But you did have a 30-year hiatus, right? Something like that between
There was
the two.
there was a gap between the two, but that made it even more flattering.
Right.
That after all that time, they would bring back this segment and name it the same
Pick that
as
mantle
Charles
back
Carlton.
up.
Yeah. So you honed your comedy skills so that you can now make us cry. Because you said you gotta make them laugh and make them cry. So this
Well, you look
evening
at some of the
news,
great comedians, Tom Hanks,
Oh, gosh.
they're incredible dramatic actors.
it's the timing, right?
Yeah,
It's
Also
the
it's
easier
timing.
to
So
care
much
for
of it's
somebody
timing.
who's made you laugh. I mean, that's part of it. If a character's made you laugh, then you grow an
Yes.
attachment to them.
Yes.
So then when it does get dramatic, you're there with them.
Yes.
Yeah. So I know you kind of shy away from celebrities and you said, I don't want to do those big stories. Those aren't the ones I want. Is there anyone that you would make an exception for that you want to do a story on?
Paul Rudd?
Ooh, good one.
Seems like a fun guy.
No, he's real down to earth.
Yeah.
The problem with interviewing celebrities is that they've been interviewed so many times that you get these canned answers. I've been interviewed a few times, and I have to resist that too, because you've answered the question before. Sometimes you just spew the same. Yeah, it's a pattern. You spew the same answer. So somebody like Paul Rudd, I think, is a really down to earth. He's been married to the same woman for a long time. Just seems like a regular guy.
Right.
I could do that one.
That would be a good one. And he's so funny.
He's really funny.
So funny.
Now, when your stories air, if it comes out and Gloria's crying, do you consider that?
Oh, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. Yeah.
Because my wife is
I don't
a huge
feel
fan of
guilty
your stories.
cashing my paycheck when that happens.
So my wife's a huge fan of your stories, and if it comes out and he's crying and she's crying, she's like, "Got us again." It's just, and so I just wondered if you had the same reaction when you saw him tear up.
It's interesting because anchor men, some exceptions here in the room, can have this reputation of being real staid and stoic and just delivering the news, and that's not who they are often. So I think that's almost part of my role is show these are the people bringing the news are real people, and there are rare moments like sometimes at the end of these stories where you get to see Jeff Glor, who Jeff Glor really is, and before that, Scott Pelley. Yeah, he was really Mr. News.
Even more, yeah.
Yeah, and you get him crying. It's never my intention to make people cry, though. I'm actually trying to make people happy. That was kind of an accident that this whole, being sponsored by Kleenex thing happened, which I'm not. But no, I'm not.
You
but
should be.
people always tell me I should be. But it's never my intention.
But I think, if people didn't care about those people, you don't cry. You have to care to cry.
Yeah.
That just doesn't happen. All right, since you won't tell me how you make people do that, or since you don't know
I
how you
don't
make
know, yeah.
I wish I knew. So, obviously, I'm sure you have producers now, I would assume, that help you find these stories and scour the country, and people probably reach out to you.
One producer, and
One
nobody
producer.
reaches out to me.
They don't. Nobody sends you
No.
stories.
I'm not sure why. I know when Carlton did this 50 years ago, and everybody was watching CBS and Walter Cronkite, people would send in letters galore. He would have files for each individual town, so he'd pull into town in his Winnebago and he could pull out the file for Toledo and he'd have 10 stories. But now, because the audience is so fragmented, and people think that we have all these millions of ideas and it's hard to choose from, nobody sends us anything. So we're always desperate for stories every day, just like you are. I don't know what I'm doing next week.
We're not alone.
Right.
Thank goodness. So then how do you find these people?
Well, I have an associate producer. That's her job.
Right.
She has many other jobs, but that's her primary job, is to find something for us to tell every week. And she'll look through local newspapers. She'll check out your website, I'm sure, looking for what you guys have done, and all over the country, and things that are, big on the internet. And she tries to find something that fits our little niche that hasn't been done.
And that's
Right.
kind of what we do sometimes, looking through the local papers, seeing what's
Yeah.
in the surrounding counties, and
Yeah.
yours is just the country.
That's right. That's right.
That's so cool. So one thing, I think why we enjoy the podcast is because you can go a little longer. You can get to know people a little better, go more in depth.
That's what I don't like about the podcast.
I'm seeing that more and more. We're not making him feel great about this decision.
So what was
It was the Steve thing news.
Yeah, there
So
you
what
go.
does it mean to you? Like, you get more time than the average story. Like, talk about how important that time is, because there's only so many minutes in a newscast.
Right. Well, time's very valuable, and there's been a trend in our business to make things shorter and shorter and shorter. And if you watch, ABC News, their stories are extremely short, though, and it limits kind of what the kind of stories you can tell, because it's got to be something that you can sum up in just a sentence or two sometimes, or a quick viral video that kind of explains itself. So the fact that I get 2.5 minutes, which is a long time, as you say, in news, is a big privilege and an immense responsibility, and you don't want people to change the channel. And at this point, I think people give me a chance, a little leeway. So if they're not hooked in the story in the first 15 seconds, they'll go, we know he's going somewhere with this. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But it is longer than most, and it's got to deliver at the end. Mm-hmm. But I got the whole country to choose from, and
that does make it easier a little bit.
And as I learned when I was picking people at random out of the phone book, people are good. Yeah. A lot better than we give them credit for. So there's a good story in most everybody, and even if it's not quite the story we're hoping for, there's still goodness in there. You just got to mine it.
Right. Yeah. And I know you did a story with your dad that really affected me so deeply. And I think, Victor, there's one thing that you will relate to. So I think you were at the Grand Canyon, and your dad saw some change, and he was just like, I think we could do it. Like, we could go down there and get
hop
it.
the fence at the Grand Canyon and try to collect 35 cents.
Sometimes you got to risk it for the biscuit. Andrea and I are both pretty frugal, so that's kind of.
This dress is from Goodwill.
we were out I was on my lunch break one time, and I stopped into a Goodwill, because that's one of the benefits of the job, is getting to swing by all these Goodwills and peddlers malls. And who's in there but Andrea? And we look at each other like,
Hey guys.
she was off work, I was on my lunch break.
We're like, this isn't good for the station's reputation.
Yeah, I was going to say, people are like, are those news anchors just hanging out?
Do they not pay them?
No, I'm going to disagree here. I think that's very good for the station's reputation.
Right.
Who wants somebody who's so pompous that they will only go to Talbot's?
See, there you
Right,
go, yeah.
exactly. I like your view of things.
Well, so what does your family think of your job? Of just, at this point,
My kids barely know what I do.
They're
They're like any other kid.
Do they have any interest? Or
Hey,
they just,
you guys, my story's on. No, that's all right, Dad.
We hear and love you.
Because my mom sometimes, whenever I first started anchoring, I'd say, hey, did you see this morning? She's like, oh, when are you on? I'm like, same
When are
time.
you on?
Yeah.
Yeah, same time every morning.
You forgot the other day when you were on, though.
That's true. I did.
I think also, it does happen. Yeah, he said this podcast is sponsored by the 4:30?
Yeah, it turns out
And
I'm
he
on
comes
at
on
4.
at 4, like as a joke.
Oh,
He didn't
that's
even
funny.
know. You poor thing.
All right, I think we're almost out of time.
All right,
Yeah.
they're probably getting ready to kick us out. But I appreciate you saying that just about, since I'm a morning show anchor, I like giving people a reason to wake up in the morning. Because sometimes you watch it and you're like, I don't want to get out of bed. Like, the world can be harsh. So
Right.
thank you for showing us that there are good people out there, and for taking the time to do this with us and do your first podcast.
Yeah. Highlighting the best in people.
Yeah. Do you have any final words of advice and wisdom?
Just do one podcast. That's enough.
There you go.
We are the one and only podcast he's ever done.
We appreciate it. Thank you so much for
Thank
talking
you.
to us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Andrea, what'd you think?
I mean, obviously, I'm so thankful, first of all, that you ripped that paper out of my hand with all my questions and
Well, I was
notes.
afraid we'd be able to hear it crackling as you were.
I mean, my hands were shaking. That's
Yeah.
how nervous I was, because I just respect this guy so much. So I was like, I can't be my typical crazy self. Like, I took it very seriously because, I mean, that's an opportunity to talk to someone who's that good at what they do. And he didn't divulge too many secrets, which I was hoping he would.
But it seems like there's
There
if there's
isn't
a
one.
secret. Yeah, it's generally just hard work, time, and experience, and
He's easy to talk to.
letting
I mean,
people
you could
learn
see that.
about people. Yeah. He was very easy to talk to. It was fun. That was the interesting thing I thought about afterwards. Like, he started off by asking us questions about ourselves, which I think made us a little more comfortable.
Yeah, it did. He thought we were married.
Yeah. Probably not the first person to make that mistake. And
Yeah.
I think he thought it was funny how quickly we both said, no!
Gross. No. But I ended up going to Georgetown that night to see him speak again. I didn't get enough. You know what I mean? And he was just as good. And he showed a lot of the stories that he's put together, some of his favorites. And of course, I was a blubbering mess for every one of them. I'm like, I don't know how he does it. Like I said, so quickly
always
fall in love with these
He
people.
always makes Mandy cry, and sometimes me.
But also just,
Always me.
talking about going in and some of the behind the scenes stuff and follow-ups, like it just made it even better seeing him present his own stories and these people. It was so great.
And sometimes he'll do a really good story, and then an even better story is when he does visit those people again to see how things have progressed.
Yeah.
So that's
But
nice.
also his segment with Bill turned out really good. His
Yeah.
Newsmakers segment with Bill was great. So it was just cool to see him here in person, and he's exactly what I thought he was.
Yeah,
gonna be.
he was what you wanted to be.
Exactly what he sounds. Because a lot of people are like, "You look different in real life." He doesn't. He's the same person.
Mm-hmm. I was impressed that I didn't fall asleep during the interview, so that was pretty good.
Yeah, you came in early for that one.
Well, yeah, the one of the Sweet 16 games, because we anchored after that, or I filled in anchoring after that, so we went on at 12:20, and then I came back in to interview him at 8 the next morning. So.
Oh my gosh.
Still don't think I'm over it.
I think you're still semi-asleep right now.
But it was it was exciting, and yeah, I really appreciate that you went to the trouble to do that to get to.
Well, I
talk
appreciated
to him, so
you,
cool.
Kind of bringing me back down to earth a little bit because I needed someone.
So people, you all don't understand. We're sitting there, the two of us facing him, and parts of the video is actually in a story that you put together that day. And we're sitting there talking to him, and I look over, and Andrea has this long sheet of notes, all these questions she wanted to ask him, and she's holding it real tightly, hands on either side of this piece of paper, and I see the hands just shaking.
I know.
And instead of just talking to him, she's like, "So let's see, how did
Which
you?"
is
And
so
it was
not me
I know that's
all.
what I'd never seen you like that. I thought, oh, Andrea shook.
I was.
So as you heard me say, just okay, let's put this paper down and let's just talk.
Oh yeah, it helped. It made it a much more natural process than it probably would have been because I didn't want to be, like a college student reading off paper, my questions.
You're a professional, Andrea.
I'm a professional.
It came out. You did a good job.
All right, so let's transition to favorite things, and
Okay.
I'm gonna bring out a quote that he actually said while we were at that speech at Georgetown that night, and it was that your enemy is someone else's best friend. And it came at a really good time for me because I feel like sometimes I get my feelings hurt easily, or I can get so upset and just dwell on things way too long. And I think it's so important to remember that, you know what, even if sometimes you get in disagreement with somebody or, you think this person is this, it's so important to remember that you're only seeing a small part of them and they're somebody else's best friend. So it just hit me at the right moment, and it stuck with me. And I was like, you know what, I need to keep looking for the good in people because that's what he does.
I
and
like
so,
that.
that was really good for me. And
So that's your favorite thing is
it
that
hit
quote.
me,
I like
yeah.
that quote. I'd never heard that, and it makes good sense.
It was a good one. It was a good one.
My favorite thing this week is food related.
I'm shocked.
Well, so here's the thing. So Friday night, Sam had a story about barbecue in Kansas City,
yes.
and watching that story made me want some barbecue. Mm-hmm. And but I wasn't able to go that night because Mandy met me for lunch, and we went out to a nearby chain steak place, and I had to send my steak back 3 times. So that was an experience. They ended up just taking it off the bill, so that was nice.
Bet you got a good amount of spit in from the chef.
And Mandy and I are both former servers. We
Right.
try to be great customers.
I didn't peg you as someone that would do that.
And so, I had ordered medium
lightly.
rare, and it came out. It was gray. It was basically well done, and I said,
Yeah.
please send it back. And I almost just ate it anyway. I was like, but it was so bad, so I sent it back. And it comes back out a new steak, and I cut it open, and it's just bloody, like bright red. And I look at the server, and she looks at me, and she goes, "I'm gonna take that back." I'm like, "Yep, yes, please, thank you." So they just
because you hate to do it, but you're also spending money.
exactly. That's my thing. It's
Steaks
like,
aren't
we're
cheap.
paying for it.
It's like you want
And
to.
even on the way out, one of the bartenders, she's like, "Did you eventually get your food?" I said, "Kind of." She's like, "We got some new staff, and we're working on it. Come back." I was like,
And I
we'll
always
see.
try to keep that in mind. I'm like,
Exactly.
you know what? They could be training somebody because I've been there.
I mean, that's the thing. And then the
person.
server kept apologizing, and it's like, it's not your fault. You're not the one back there cooking
we get
it.
it. We've been there.
I'm
We
sure
get
this is
it.
just as awful for you as it is for me.
There you go. Yeah. Oh, that's the worst because
yeah.
you feel like it's your fault and it's not.
That's the
but-
thing. I've been there.
Yeah.
So the next day, when was it? Saturday? Maybe it was. No, it was Saturday. So we decided to go eat at Lyle's Barbecue on Clays Mill Road, which Mandy and I had never been to, even though we live close to it. I'm not going to give my exact address, unlike you telling everybody exactly where you live. But we live close to it. We'd just never gone there. And so There is a Mexican restaurant we love right next to it called La Marquesa, but we decided, let's just stop in and check it out. And I was very, very happy.
Oh, so good.
I'll eat city barbecue every now and then, but I always feel real heavy afterwards. Mm-hmm. This stuff the barbecue was pretty good. And here's the thing. I think barbecue is delicious. It's amazing. For me, good barbecue on the list of food is near the top. So pretty good barbecue, fantastic.
Right.
Like that's great for me. But the sides were
money.
Some of the best sides I've ever had.
Yes. Well, he has
Mandy
come
got
on
the mac and
show.
cheese.
Oh, you can't.
Vera loved the green beans. She was killing those
Honestly,
green beans.
mac
The
and
potato
cheese is
salad.
hard to do well.
Yeah. No, yeah, especially in a restaurant because it's so easy to overdo
it's like
stuff.
grainy or
My potato salad was it was awesome. So yeah, Lyle's barbecue. I was down. We'll be back.
and it's a good old like local place.
Yeah.
Like these people are from here, and I think they started in Nicholasville.
Oh, really?
Like, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure about this. I think they started like next to a gas station.
Huh.
And it's so good.
Yeah.
So good. And
That's what we both just killed it. Like our food was just gone.
he and I judged a contest for the Fraternal Order of Firefighters. Had this camp out at the Kentucky Horse Park, and it was like a cooking competition. So we had barbecue chicken and
Nice.
steaks, and I ate so much food. And it was so neat to just hear like an expert
Yeah, I
talk
was gonna
about
say,
what
yeah,
you should
it's-
be looking for, because I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah,
it all
this
tastes
tastes
good to me.
Yeah, he's like, well, no, the texture is blah blah.
Yeah, so he helped me a lot, but so good.
Cool.
If you haven't been there, that is a good spot.
It's good to know owned by a cool
Maybe
dude.
they can be our first
So,
sponsor.
Yeah, we'll see. Lyle's Barbecue. If you'd like to sponsor us, just in food, I'd be happy with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, good barbecue and
Good people.
amazing sides.
Yes.
Get that mac and cheese. And they also, the other thing was they had
All the
like 6
carbs.
different sauces on the table, and I'm like, I'm gonna try them all. The bourbon sauce was a little odd. I guess I've never really had bourbon on barbecue, like bourbon.
Sounds good to me.
Well, it was edible. I mean, but I like mixing the sweet and spicy. That's my thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, it was all good.
We can go down a rabbit
Yeah, I was gonna
hole
say
on
I could just
food.
sit and talk about my barbecue experience for a long time at Lyle's Barbecue, but it was very good. Yeah, so if you're in the area, that's my favorite thing this week.
Yeah. Looking forward to next week. We actually are a little ahead right now, so we actually know who our
I know
guest
we
is
could
next week.
actually.
It is Ray Brown, one of our photographers, and I think only Barbara is senior to him on the staff. He's been here a
I
long
didn't realize
time.
that, yeah.
So he has a wealth of stories.
Yes, he has
to
plenty of
tell,
stories.
and he tells them well.
And what an upbringing.
Yeah, he had a tough life.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you work with somebody as much as like we work with our photographers, you get to know each other pretty well. And I knew that about Ray, and I didn't think a lot of people did, but I don't know. It's amazing the things you don't know about people.
Yeah. That's what I've enjoyed about this,
Yeah.
getting to know
It's a
people's
good one.
backstories and letting everybody else know about them. So, well, everybody, thank you all for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed our conversation with Steve Hartman. If this was your first experience with this podcast, because I'd imagine a name like that might bring in some new listeners, go back, start at episode 1 where we interview each other. That's kind of the get to know us part. And then, listen through.
And also, it was his first podcast and only
I couldn't
podcast
believe
ever.
that when he said, yeah, because
People have asked, and he never did it.
Yeah, we said, well, I'm sure you've done plenty of these. And he goes, no, this is my first podcast. What?
I know, and he'll never do it again, I think.
Well,
After
he's
that.
already perfected it,
I know,
He
he's
It was
amazing.
great. So, yeah, why go out on top?
Yeah, there you go. And if you haven't checked out his segments, just look up On the Road on YouTube and go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
It is
Have
worth
the
your time.
Kleenex.
All right, bye, everybody.
Bye.